Hello and welcome to my channel, In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and this is my weekly reading vlog. My daffodils are blooming. And these daffodils here are about to pop. Look at all them. I think I need to thin them. It's been a while. Getting kind of clumpy there. And the tulips are not blooming yet, but they're coming up, as are the irises. It's a mess. Hello, it is Tuesday evening, and I am getting started on dinner, which is actually going to be breakfast for dinner. And remember, I don't know if you remember, but last week in my weekly reading vlog, when my husband and I went to, where did we go? Stanton, Virginia, and we had brunch at a restaurant there. We had biscuits, and I mentioned that we still preferred my grandma's biscuits to those. And so that just got me all in the mood, and I was thinking breakfast for dinner. Ooh, I'll make the biscuits. So I am making the biscuits. This week, life update first. So yeah, I've not been feeling well, which I know a lot of you out there, a lot of you in your videos have been saying similar things, praying for all of us collectively to get well and to get well soon and stay well. And that's 2 cups. Yeah, I was mostly better. Like most of my symptoms had gone, but the sore throat was just getting ridiculous. It was not going away. In fact, it was getting worse. And like nothing that I threw at it was working. So I actually ended up going to the doctor. So I was like, I was quite sure that I had tonsillitis at least or something, because my sore throat was so bad. And so he looked at it and he listened to all my symptoms and everything. And it's like, yeah, you probably had the flu because, flu B is going around like crazy. Pretty sure you probably had the flu, and those flu symptoms, they can persist for a while, so you just need to give it a few more days. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. That's so nice. But he did give me some suggestions of things to do. One of which was a humidifier, which we've not had a humidifier for years, literally, even though I know it's a really good thing. They're just so stinking hard to keep clean. Like, they collect mildew, like, no matter how hard you try to keep it clean, like squeaky clean. So years ago, I gave up on the whole concept of humidifiers, but I was so desperate that my husband actually went out and got one for me. And it's a really basic design, so I think it might actually work. So we'll see. Anyway, currently, I used that last night and it seemed to help. But also, he gave me some specific type of nasal spray to use because he's like, it's basically because of postnasal drip. So yeah, actually today I feel a lot better after having taken 2 doses of the nasal spray. So that's good. And I don't have tonsillitis. So anyways, enough of my medical history. Let's move on. I'm feeling much better today and I'm very grateful for that. And I can swallow sometimes without pain. So that's great. And now I'm making biscuits and reading updates. So I'm still reading Cecilia and Count of Monte Cristo, and I thought maybe I had gotten behind on Count of Monte Cristo, but I don't know if I miscalculated the first time I calculated out how many pages I need to read every day, or if I've read more than I thought I did per day. At any rate, I'm still good. I still need at pace for 15-ish pages a day through the end of May, and I should still be good, I think. I think. It's definitely quick reading, and it's interesting. There's no question about that. It's just finding the time to read it is my only issue, Like Chantal says, I wish I could read all day, but I can't. I have to do things like make dinner and also find the salt. Where's the salt? I need to find the salt. I found the salt. Okay, so what was I saying? Count of Monte Cristo. Yeah, very readable. I just don't have time. I would like to be able to read all day, but I can't. So Cecilia, also enjoying it. Have not made as much progress in the past few days as I would have liked, but I am enjoying it, and I'm almost finished with the volume 2, which, by the way, so my library has it on Hoopla, strangely enough. Like, I don't understand the concept of putting a digital book which is formatted digitally for the purpose of being a digital book. It's not like a print version, like an edition of a print version that is the digital version. It's literally made for digital reading. But they split it into 3 volumes. It's 3 separate volumes that I have to check out separately through Hoopla. It's the stupidest thing ever. But first of all, it's in 3 volumes. And secondly, I thought that maybe Cecilia was originally printed. Actually, I assumed the original Cecilia was printed in 3 volumes. And that's one reason why they put it in 3 volumes. But no, that's not true, actually. Apparently, Cecilia was originally printed in 5 volumes. So even more so. Why? I don't understand. It's also very, very unevenly divided. So Cecilia is, the way Fanny broke it up is she has books. And then each book has like 15 to 20 chapters or something in it. And so you would think if someone were to split it up into volumes that there would be like, they would have, like, let's say there are 15 books. They would put 5 books in the first volume, and then 5 more in the second volume, and 5 more books in the third volume, and split it like that. No. I think they went by page count. And so, like, each volume is, like, 228 Kindle pages at the size of letters that of you know, the small font. I don't, it doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense, and it's really starting to annoy me. But anyways, I'm just reading the book. I just keep reading the book and enjoying it overall. And I'm basically halfway through is what my point is. And we are a little more than halfway through the month, so that's good. But I do need to pick up the pace just a skoshi bit here. I'm almost finished. Well, I guess I'm more than halfway through because I'm almost finished the second volume. I have like 60 or 80 pages left or something like that. I guess I'm on pace with that too. Maybe not perfectly, but reasonably so. And also on pace with Power Through Prayer, which the goal is to read that by the end of March. Last week in my weekly reading wrap-up, I mentioned that I wanted to pick up something light to read, and so I was focusing on my Christian fiction reading for Jeanette's Christian fiction reading challenge, and the prompt was a book set outside your own country. And so I picked up the only one that I had on my shelf, realized it was second in a series, so I was reading the first in the series on Kindle, which I had on Kindle, or I borrowed from the library, or I had it, I don't know. Anyway, I was reading it digitally, and I wasn't feeling it. I think it was a fine book. I said I wanted something, you know, just fun and entertaining that wasn't, you know, real heavy or had to think too much. And this one was a little bit to the extreme, to the point of being like silly, I guess. And that's the only word I can use. And I don't want to be mean. I think it's a perfectly fun book. Like, a lot of people would really enjoy it. It's just like the main character, it's set like in the late 1800s. And the main character, she's a telegraph operator at this company. And she overhears a couple of her, one of her male colleagues and his friends at a bookstore. And they're reading and laughing over this book about, basically about relationships, like for spinsters, and like how to have a relationship with a man or whatever. I forget the name of it. And so she thought that was dumb. She has no desire to get married. That's the other thing. Like, she wants to be a career woman, which I don't have a problem with that. But the way that it was presented in the book, it was like, it was just presented in very simple, I don't know, in a very basic way, and not in like a nuanced way. Just a straight up, like, she had this black and white view of, I don't ever want to get married. Marriage is not for me. Marriage is dumb. I just want to have a career, a fulfilling career. That's what I want to do with my life, and nothing. And there was no other consideration of anything. There wasn't any reason behind it other than she just wanted to have a job instead of getting married. And there was no nuance. There was no real explanation. It's just like, this is who she is and what she wants to do. She's a career woman. She's like, I think it was supposed to be like the Victorian new woman sort of idea, but it was very, very, very simplified and brought down to a very basic level with zero nuance. And I guess that's the part about it that, like, I don't need it to be a deep novel, but there wasn't enough depth to make it interesting for me at all. So I gave up on it. Long story short, don't need any more details about it. I gave up on it, and then I'm probably not even going to read the second book in the series. I'm going to unhaul that one, which is good because that's one of my challenges for March is to unhaul some books. So unhaul that one, probably won't read it, don't want to waste my time on it. So I picked up another book. This one was in my Kindle library that I already owned. So that is The Paris Dressmaker by Kristy Cambron. And I usually like Kristy Cambron's books. She writes historical fiction. A lot of it is set in World War II, and this one is also set in World War II. And I'm just getting into it. I'm like maybe 20-ish% of the way through. So much more interesting already than the other book. Set in France, so it's set outside my country, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I just haven't had time to read it. It's the story of my life. So that is what I've got going on reading-wise, and yeah. So I'm going to finish these biscuits and get ready for the rest of my family to get home and come eat them. And I will see you next time. Bye. Farm fresh eggs. I love the colors. The pretty blues, the green. Hello, it's Wednesday afternoon and I find myself with some free time because some of my piano students canceled for today, so I had some free time. My kids and I met my husband at Sweet Frog and we had some frozen yogurt because it is a beautiful, gorgeous day. It's I think it made it into the 70s, 75 degrees right now currently, which is the first time this calendar year I believe that it has hit that temperature. So, and I am actually finally feeling better after 2 weeks to the day, at least, of being sick. On top of which, I've had a cough since last November, December, that has not quite completely gone away. And I feel like now that I had this flu or whatever I had, finally it like all of the symptoms are leaving just in time for allergies. You know, welcome to life on planet Earth. We just go from one fun thing to another. But anyways, I was feeling so much better today than I have in a long time. So, and the sunshine was just so wonderful and the warmth. So we had some Sweet Frog, then I ran some errands, and then I stopped at the new Human Being here in this area, which is like a chain of coffee little drive-through places. And sorry, I'm having to hold my phone because the way the sun is right now, and anyway, the shadows and everything. So I'm having to hold it right here so precariously, but I want to pick up my coffee. So you're going to see my fingers here. So hold on a second. Anyways, so I got a cold brew, which isn't too bad. I'm kind of picky about cold brew. It's a little bit on the weaker side, but I'd rather that. Some people make their cold brew so stinking strong that it doesn't matter how much half and half you put in it, it still is like really bitter or so. I don't know, and it shouldn't be like that. Cold brew should not be like that. So I'd rather it be on the weaker side, but this is maybe a little bit too much on the weaker side. But it's good. A couple little updates for you in the reading realm. I keep forgetting to say that I am pretty sure I have DNF'd Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And it wasn't that it was a horrible book. In fact, I can understand why people like it. I like the world that he's building and the interesting, you know, it's partly real and it's partly, you know, it's very fantastical of a story with the magic and everything. The characters are interesting, but it was just meandering too much. I forget how many chapters I made it in, like 20 chapters or something or so. And it was meandering so much. And I just would have preferred the plot to be a little more linear, I guess. And then the characters also were shifting so that it was difficult to know. And I'm sure the more that I read, the more clear it would become, or the clearer it would become.
exactly, you know, who was good and who was not, and what was good and what was not. But it was just so, it just kept shifting and it wasn't clear. I loved some of the imagery. I loved some aspects of where the story was going. Some of it was just downright odd, which is okay. I can handle a certain level of oddity, but all of that combined together with the fact that I just straight up was not, I didn't care. I set it down because I had other stuff to focus on, and I just wasn't interested in picking it back up. Not because I hated it. I have no adverse feelings about it. It's just, there was nothing compelling me to pick it back up. So, and honestly, Kelly and Miriam all felt similarly. We've all DNF'd it to one degree or another and may or may not ever pick it back up again. So that was unfortunate because I'd heard really good things, and initially it seemed like such an interesting story and the writing was really good and I was very interested in it, but I'm going to return it to the library, both my copies that I currently have. So that is update on that. The other little thing I wanted to mention was, I mentioned this in my Discord server, but today, as I kept reading in the Count of Monte Cristo, I was like, okay, they keep talking about telegraphs, but this is during the time of Napoleon. Telegraphs had not been invented yet. And so then I just felt like, okay, is my understanding of history like completely wrong? Do I have my mental timeline completely off? Because that's totally possible. You know, details and dates don't stick in this brain very well. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm placing the telegraph in my mental timeline in the wrong place. So I looked it up and I was right. The actual telegraph as we know it was invented by Samuel Morse in 1837, well after the time that the story in this book takes place, the time of Napoleon. And there's my husband with our Chick-fil-A. However, in France, they had like a visual telegraph. So they had this system of towers, and the towers were every 5 to 15 kilometers. And at the top of the tower, there was this contraption that had like one horizontal arm and then two vertical arms, but they could move them in different shapes. And it could make something like, I don't know, however many different shapes. I'm going to throw out a random number, 37 different shapes. I don't know, something like that. I do know that it could be configured, I think, in like 90 something different ways. So like, you know, one arm could go this way and the other arm could go that way, and then it could be tilted this way and then it could be tilted that way. And so it would make all these different shapes. And so it created a code. And then in turn, like those codes were like letters. And so then in turn, they made a code that every tower had a book with identical code. And they used those letters and put them in sequences to make like common words or whatever. And so then the government would use these telegraphs to communicate information, such as the fact that Napoleon escaped from Elba, where he had been imprisoned, and had landed on the shores of France. So that was communicated via the visual telegraph. So that was invented in France in 1798. And they had a small system of it, of those towers set up prior to Napoleon coming into power. And then when he came into power, he expanded it. I was like reading all into this because I was like, I have never heard of this. This is so fascinating. This is so interesting. So the French telegraph, yeah. And it plays a part in, well, you know, a minor role, I guess, so far. I'm only like 100 pages in the story of the Count of Monte Cristo. So anyway, that was my interesting little tidbit that I learned today. And so now I'm going to go read because I have 2 hours. I mean, it won't be solid reading because I'm in a place where there will be people. I will be interrupted, so it won't be solid reading. But I will have some time to read, and that will be marvelous. And I will see you next time. Bye.
Now it is Saturday morning, time for me to wrap all of this up, and also I have to share with you that I finished Cecilia. Woo! That feels like quite the accomplishment, because I believe the print copy is over 1,000 pages. The Kindle that I read was weirdly divided into 3 volumes. As I mentioned already, each of them was like 280 some pages. So not quite 900 pages in the Kindle version, but the print was pretty tiny. Still feels like quite the accomplishment. And overall, it's not like my favorite book of all time. It's not one that I'd be like, oh, you've got to read by Cecilia by Fanny Burney. It's the best. But it was a worthwhile read. I'm glad I read it. I enjoyed the process of reading it. There were times when there's definitely a lot of words, way too many words. It needed to be edited. The plot takes very many convoluted turns, and they're 100% not all necessary. There are some scenes that feel repetitive. It's like we've been there before. We've gone over this. We don't need to hash this over again. Don't need to beat a dead horse. So some of it was unnecessary. So there's that. That's took down the enjoyment level of it a little bit. It was interesting. It kept me reading. I wanted to find out what happened with Cecilia. I enjoyed the process of reading it for the most part. There were some areas that I skimmed where we had like some dialogue between characters that only served to be like mouthpieces for Fanny Burney, I guess, in terms of her point about society and morality and economy and finances and the like. And personally, I found that a little bit on the boring side. So I kind of like skimmed through some of that dialogue, some of that kind of conversation. But it was still overall an enjoyable read. And I do recommend it for anybody who enjoys classic novels, who enjoys finding new female classic authors to enjoy. Anyone who is a big fan of Jane Austen, because Fanny Burney was a huge influence on her, and it's worth reading for that alone. You can definitely see inspiration for many of Austen's novels in there. I saw inspiration for elements of Pride and Prejudice, elements of Sense and Sensibility, elements in Emma, and even in Mansfield Park, from characters to phrases. Like there were some phrases that Austen didn't exactly lift verbatim from Cecilia, but definitely used them and made them her own, but definitely was playing off of them. And of course, famously, she got the title Pride and Prejudice from this book. It is spoken of quite frequently, that those terms together, in the final chapter of the book, and a lot is made of it. Clearly, Fanny Burney is using the themes of Pride and Prejudice in this novel as well as other themes that she has going on. So yeah, it's definitely worth reading for an Austen fan, and it's just a worthwhile read if you enjoy classics. It's not a book for everybody. Not everybody is going to love it, but it was enjoyable. And I think I settled on giving it 4 stars. So I read Cecilia. There's so much more that I could say about it. I don't think I want to do a separate video. So let me just take a few minutes to mention a couple things that I don't think that I've said here on my channel. We've had a conversation in Discord about it, and I have mentioned some things there. But one thing that I really wanted to do sometimes in reading this book was to just reach through the pages and shake Cecilia, because she is described as the sensible, very reasonable young woman, intelligent, etc. And she displays that, but not consistently. She has some blind spots. She has some naivety. She believes and trusts some people that she should not. And she gets herself in situations that a wiser person with more discernment would have avoided. She gets tied up in overthinking and overanalysis of things, which leads her to behave foolishly. And so she's not she's often described as, wise, etc., and discerning. There's room for growth in that area, let's just say. I wanted to reach in there and shake some sense into that girl. There's a very interesting cast of characters, and they are very one-dimensional characters that each serve one purpose in Burney's book, and one purpose only. They're not meant to be fleshed out. They're just meant to highlight one aspect of moral character, or one aspect of society, or one element, or even just to bring humor. I think some of them are there just to provide humor in the story. There's one really interesting character who is supposed to be like a prophet of some kind in the story. And he's a little bit mysterious, and he has a bit of an interesting backstory that you don't discover until 2/3 of the way through the book or so. And he's just very intriguing and adds a layer of mystery, and not quite like, not magical anyway, because there's nothing magical about him, but he kind of just always appears on the scene, and he always seems to know things, and everybody wonders how he knows them. And he's always like a Merlin kind of character, like saying these wise things, making these pronouncements, casting these judgments on people, like a street preacher almost. So he's a very interesting character. There's one scene towards the end of the book where, potential spoiler alert, where Cecilia is on the brink of death, and he is surprised, like he comes to see her and he's surprised by that. And so he kneels down to pray. And I was like, I was prepared for like this touching scene, because the way Fanny Burney is setting it up, like everybody feels like, you know, they sense the importance of the moment, and like there's an air of almost a sacred element here in this moment, in this story where he's kneeling to pray. But then when he kneels to pray, and I think like he's about to pray over Cecilia that she would be restored to full health, basically he delivers sort of a eulogy. Basically, he's like saying how wonderful she has been in her life and how much the world is going to miss her when she passes on. And Fanny Burney continues just to describe it as this very touching and holy sort of scene. And I was like, that was a bit of a letdown. Like, yeah, I didn't like that. Anyways, I feel like there were other things that I was going to say. I think I've already mentioned that there are huge themes of finance and money, and how money and greed shape people, how it influences people, how it causes them to do things or not things. In this story, another spoiler alert, Cecilia is stripped of all of her financial accoutrements, and it leads to a very dramatic moment in the story when she's like, all she has to offer is herself, just herself, nothing else. She is even stripped of her ability to do good works, because she has no property of her own. And so it's really an interesting, Fanny Burney really sets up an interesting dynamic in this story that could generate a lot of discussion about, I don't know, the whole thing that she set up there with Cecilia initially being an heiress and then being stripped of all of that, and the way that her love interest, Mortimer Delville, which by the way, the name Mortimer kills me. Anyways, Mortimer Delville, you know, he falls madly in love with Cecilia, but his family is completely against it because of the terms of her uncle's will, and that he would have to take her name, and that they object most strongly to that. At the time, Cecilia is very wealthy, and if they had allowed Mortimer and her to marry at that time, then Cecilia's money would have been useful in replenishing their estate. Like a big deal is made up of how they're holding on to their family name and the honor of their family name, but their actual property is falling apart in pieces. And there's a lot of like metaphor going on there. But then in the end, as the way things fall out, by the time Mortimer and Cecilia are actually able to embark on their married life together, Cecilia has nothing. And so it's just interesting. And yet they gained the point that they wanted, and that they don't lose their family name. But what has that gotten for them in the end? They still are stuck with their falling estates. Now, Mortimer has good solid plans of, you know, financial plans of restoring without the benefit of Cecilia's inheritance. So that's good. You know, there's positive hope for the future or whatever. But it is interesting, the points that Fanny Burney was making in this story, and the twist that the story took, and the journey that she takes you on, the fairly convoluted journey. I vaguely remember that Evelina, which I read several years ago, was also a fairly convoluted plot. But what can I say? I'm the queen of convoluted rambling, as I have demonstrated for the past 10 minutes. So anyway, that was Cecilia. I read this morning 3 more chapters in Power Through Prayer. we will be having the discussion tonight, which would be last night when you are watching this. And we will have one more discussion this coming Saturday. I hope you'll join us as we wrap up our discussions on the book Power Through Prayer by E.M. Bounds, which I am very much enjoying, and it's really been very convicting to me as far as the importance of spending time in prayer. And very great book. If you want to some encouragement in your prayer life and maybe a little bit of a kick in the pants to get your prayer life going or revive it a little bit, it is a great book for that, and I've been enjoying that. So that has been my week, and this coming week on the channel I will have, I hope, my April TBR. That will probably go live Wednesday. I hope. I gotta film that still, but and then on Friday, I have a very special video that is going to come up, and I hope that y'all don't hate me and unsubscribe as soon as you watch that video, because I am quite sure that some of you, you're not gonna like what I say in it. Anyway, it's part of a new series I'm hoping to start of hot takes. So I do have some fairly hot takes on some things, and I'm just gonna share them with the world. Anyway, so that is coming up this week. Also, this Saturday, like I said, final live discussion on Tiffany's channel, Beautiful Minutia of Power Through Prayer. So that's my week. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week. Bye.